The evidence is everywhere. Just look at the opinion mongering that blankets much of cable news, or the decision of newspaper companies like Bilo and Gannett to install general managers over news operations so the content they produce can be even more closely aligned with the needs of advertisers. Or the creation of companies like Demand Media, the wildly successful Demand Media, whose sole purpose is to generate mass audience at the lowest possible cost. The fact is, the conditions that created the need for public media are even more necessary and even more present today than they were in 1967. The digital transformation that has so disrupted legacy media, old media, may ultimately yield a more open, transparent, and informed society. And wonderful and innovative, important new commercial startups like the brilliant Daily Beast, like Global Post, and like Jim Brady's new operation, which we call, until you have a name, we will continue to call the Brady thing, give us a great deal of optimism about commercial media. But in the short run, there's little reason to think that commercial media alone, whether legacy or startup, will be able to make up for the loss of original reporting that we've suffered over the last several years. There's a second natural advantage to public media, and that is a diversified business model. And it may hold greater promise, I believe, than in fact the business models of commercial media. So let's look at those various revenue sources and take them apart, because there's several of them. And it is in those balance, therein lies, I think, the promise of public media. First of all, there's sponsorship, which is the closest thing we have to advertising, but it is not advertising. It is shorter, it's in a much less cluttered environment, and it's a message of support for public media as opposed to a commercial to drive a product. And while it was down and was the most hit by the bad economy, it is not back to historic highs, but it is definitely back up, I think in large part due to brand and to the kind of audiences that NPR and public radio enjoys. It's an uncluttered environment, it's a safe environment. The next revenue stream, membership, that non-mandatory pay model. Interestingly enough, membership is a really interesting thing, which if I ever go back to school, I'm going to write a doctoral thesis on, but I'd have to do a joint degree in psychology, because it's just a fascinating thing that happens when somebody gives you even as little as $5. They feel such a kinship to you. The act of a voluntary donation makes somebody part of the whole. And it is a very, very powerful thing. And the interesting thing about the membership model at NPR, which unfortunately I think, well, depending on your point of view, fortunately or unfortunately makes it very hard to replicate for other news organizations who will often say, oh, well, we're going to try the NPR membership model, is that kind of relationship that people have. It's not just the equivalent of a tip jar that you find on some websites. But the thing about membership is, in last year's terrible economy, membership was up. More people gave to their local public radio station than ever before last year. And I think it is not despite the economy, I think it is because of the economy and because of the news environment. So that's our second one, holding strong. The third, foundation support, up. And the interesting thing is, despite, again, the hits to endowments, more new foundations are recognizing the need to support journalism. So foundations like the Open Society Institute, Gates, Omidyar are joining the foundations that have always supported public media like Ford, Knight, MacArthur, Carnegie, and of course Pew. And philanthropic support is up. Philanthropic support from individuals. And I'm not just talking about at NPR, although obviously we were famously bolstered by a wonderful gift from Joan Kroc, the widow of Ray Kroc, founder of McDonald's, in 2002, and that went into an endowment which helps us every year. But you can see that large-scale philanthropic support across the country. Warren Hellman launching the Bay Area News Project, or whatever its new name is now, in the Bay Area, or John Thornton for the Texas Tribune. So all of these revenue streams and other ones that may emerge work in tandem, and they sustain us, so that when any single source of revenue is down, we are perhaps wounded in that area, but not killed. We're not at risk of going out of business. And the other interesting thing is, even as we venture into new platforms, one of the things that happens in commercial media, you go from print or from television onto the web, and it pulls out, your legs are taken out from under you in terms of your revenue support. So far, that has not been the case in radio. At least we're finding that our presence on new devices is not so much supplanting our traditional audience as extending our reach and deepening audience engagement. And that makes us optimistic that all of these traditional sources of revenue, including listener support, will carry over in large part or even entirely as we ultimately all go digital, even though we are and will be free, even on mobile. Third, there's a third reason that public media is part of the solution, and it lies in the fact that the American public, both individually and through our various government institutions, has made an enormous and sustained investment in public media. And that now represents a valuable public asset. There is a public broadcasting station in every city and hamlet in America. There are 770 NPR member stations in this country. And there are other public radio stations. And there are public television stations. And each of them have a home. They have bricks and mortar and a foundation literally in the soil of their community. They have people that work in the community. They have an unwavering commitment to serve the underserved. And there is a profound, deep, even intimate connection between those stations and their local audiences, because the station is touching the people and the people are literally touching the station. And again, that's where that contribution, that cycle, that reinforcement of loyalty, of I give to you, you give back to me, and it goes round and round, that encourages people to feel part of this collective. In many places, many towns, those local public broadcasting stations are the only locally owned and operated news organizations. The only place where decisions from the bottom to the very top of the organization are made locally based on local needs. That intangible capital must be leveraged, not squandered. As guardians of a public trust, we have an obligation to see that 40 years of investment in public media is deployed to address the current crisis in journalism and does not simply fall victim to the turbulence of the times.